I want to take a moment to acknowledge a couple of folks who are here. One who has been so important to this ministry and to that which probably is the greatest work of this ministry, which was our television outreach. And I think I've shared with you before we concluded the Best Is Yet to Be television program, we learned that we had actually gotten a Nielsen rating, which you have to have a certain percentage of the population to get one. And we had a Nielsen rating here in Sacramento. I don't know how many homes it was in, but it was about at least 20,000 people were listening on a Sunday. So from that, figuring this was one of our smaller areas, we were in San Francisco and all the communities up and down the coast, one time in Los Angeles and in Seattle. So anyway, we estimated that we were reaching 100,000 people on a Sunday morning. Tom Thompson was the director of that program and made it so special. And so I am grateful that he is here today. I'm going to ask him to stand up because it's his birthday. Stand up. Will you join me? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Tom. Happy birthday to you. Where did that come from? What we usually sing, and God is blessing you now. God is blessing you now. God is blessing you, you're wonderful. God is blessing you now. Bless you, Tom. Tom is going to be working with me starting tomorrow, and Stu next to him. We're going to be working on a podcast, which is entitled, we haven't locked down the title, but we're getting close to it. Something like Using Metaphysics to Save America. You know, when I spoke that word back I didn't speak it, I was being introduced. And so the introducer said that I was going to do a podcast with this title. Everybody broke out cheering. And I think it's because people feel America needs help. And we've legislated ourselves to the wall, you know. It isn't going to be solved that way. It's only going to be solved by what we're privileged to know. And so anyway, I give thanks for Tom and Stu, who joined us in the past and working with me again on that new podcast. I also want to acknowledge two people who've come a long way to be with us this morning, Don and Diane Fraser. Would you two stand up, please? Okay, now these two are, they've come 90 miles to be here from Napa Valley today. Thank you for making that trip. Wonderful, dear friends, and I've worked with Tom in the past too. Well, I'd better start sharing a message. That's what they expect me to do. I always loved that Jim Freeman, who was one of the great figures in Unity history, always used to get up, and I heard him do it several times. He'd say, well, they've asked me to speak. I guess they want me to speak about silent unity. I don't know what I've got to say. Of course, everybody's come to hear him. They knew he was there. He would always say, I don't know what I'm going to say. And then he'd start talking, and pretty soon we had to get a hook to drag him off the stage. So anyway, I have really in mind so much that I would love to share with you. I won't be able to cover all those bases, but I hope to nail down the central point of what I shared at the Filmore Foundation. It wasn't the Filmore Foundation, it was the Filmore Festival that they had. And I was asked to be the keynote speaker. And so when I heard that it was to be the biggest unity retreat that they'd ever had in modern times, and I thought, wow, they've all come to hear me. I mean, I'm the keynote speaker. But when I got there, I discovered they had sold out as soon as it was announced before they'd even said who the speakers were. I mean, I got cut down in size rapidly. They asked me to be the keynote speaker for a couple of reasons, I think. One is that, in a real sense, I lived with Charles Filmore, the co-founder of the Unity movement, for 50 years. You got it. I lived with Dorothy Pierson for 50 years. And Dorothy Pierson was a protege of Charles Filmore. I wish I could tell you that whole story of how that happened, but she heard Charles speak in Filmore when she was only 22 years old, and was so moved by his talk, she said, I want to go back there because he painted this grand picture of having little houses for everybody on this special place in Missouri where everybody would get up and love everybody, and it would just be the original hippie kind of compound, you know. So anyway, she said, I want to be a part of that. So in any event, she ended up at Unity Village, and it was actually downtown Unity when she went there. But she always felt like he was part of the family, and in time, he invited her to come and live on property that they had out in the country, which is right next door to which it's now Unity Village. But she was so close to him that if she felt like popping in the house, she would, and they'd have these visits. And during his visits, she said, she'd be talking to him, and suddenly his eyes would go closed, and he wouldn't be there. And his wife, his second wife then, Cora, came bustling in, and she said, oh dear, Charles has gone into the silence now. You probably better go. Well, that happened fairly regularly, and I said, Dorothy, what do you think? And she says, I think he was falling asleep myself. I tell you that because when you read about Charles' life, you find out that he would only get 2 hours sleep a night. And that rung a bell with me because I wrote a book, as you know, on the metaphysics of Buckminster Fuller. And Bucky only slept for 2 hours a night, too. But Bucky made no bones about the fact that he could just close his eyes, and whereas most people have to take 20 minutes to fall asleep, Bucky could close his eyes and he was gone. But everybody knew what was happening. Bucky had been up all night working on some project or something, and so they'd just wait till he'd wake up. But around Charles came this word, oh, he's in the silence. So you get the picture of the person that founded this Unity work as really able to just go into the silence, you know, doing metaphysical work. And the fact that he wrote so many books that were really heavy metaphysics, people have always associated Charles with a very serious, pointed man using his consciousness to transform his body and his life. I happen to know, again, because I lived with Dorothy for 50 years, that Charles was a real character. That is, he loved Western movies. And so Dorothy and her first husband, Don, had a rumble seat, roadster, I guess it was, back in those days, and they would take him to the movies quite regularly. And in this book, his granddaughter is talking about the fact that everybody knew Charles just loved movies. And he loved to wear cologne. And so that he could always tell when Grandpapa was there because he smells so good. And he loved to well, why don't I read this to you? Because it's funny. She says, it is difficult for me to realize that this man who was the perfect grandfather and who had such great fun enjoying with his family all the simple pleasures of everyday life was at the same time a great scholar, teacher, philosopher, and prophet. But perhaps this was the secret of his stature. Nothing was too small, nothing too great for his attentive consideration. He would come in with his clean scrubbed look, smelling of sweet cologne, and we would listen to the hit parade on the radio and dance to the songs of Wee Bonnie Baker. Anybody here remember Wee Bonnie Baker? Nobody dares hold up their hand. I can, that's pretty far back. He loved jokes. When he'd give a talk, his wife would sit behind him, Myrtle, and they said she'd pull on his coat when he started telling too many jokes, because he loved to do that. He loved jokes and even going to Western movies with his grandchildren. Yet he could also talk to a group of the most learned metaphysicians and having them hanging on his every word. So, what I want you to know is that Charles was sort of an all-around sort of guy. He wasn't sitting in the silence all the time, even though, as I say, that's a word that's been attached to him in time. And so you want to emulate the founder of the work? Go to more movies. Wear cologne. Anyway, what is the secret of Charles and Myrtle Filmore? Myrtle, of course, was clearly somebody who possessed the capacity to activate in her mind that which she desired. And unquestionably, Unity started because of her healing, because she spoke with such intensity to the cells of her body and proclaimed her healing from a lifetime of tuberculosis. So that was clear about her. Also, what was clear as she continued to work is her spirit of love. However, the fact that these two people, at this point in their lives, was able to start a movement that has become a worldwide movement and influence people like Norman Vincent Peale, who's known around the world for positive thinking. I was in Kansas City when Norman came back and publicly said, I owe everything to Myrtle and Charles Filmore because they opened my eyes. So these two people have not only started this worldwide movement, but have influenced so many people. What was the secret? We know, of course, it wasn't the movies, and it wasn't cologne, and it wasn't any of these things, but there was something powerful moving in their life. How did they effect that? I suggest, as I did at the conference, that it began when they wrote a covenant in 1892. The two of them sat down, they both signed this, and last week they had the original covenant that these two signed at the school for everybody to view. But it reads, Dedication and Covenant, December 7th, 1892. We, Charles Filmore and Myrtle Filmore, husband and wife, hereby dedicate ourselves, our time, our money, all that we have, and all that we expect to have, and all we expect to have, I typed that twice, to the Spirit of truth, and through it to the Society of Silent Unity. It being understood and agreed that the said Spirit of truth shall render unto us an equivalent for this dedication in peace of mind, health of body, wisdom, understanding, love, life, an abundant supply of all things necessary to meet every want without our making any of these things the object of our existence. In the presence of the conscious mind of Christ Jesus, the 7th day of December, A.D. 1892. It is, to me, so important to recognize that the Filmores had this covenant, not with themselves, not with their higher power, but with the Spirit of truth, which was their name at that occasion, with God. And I want to share another writing from his granddaughter, Rosemary, about Charles. Most of us approach God as though he were either so distant as to seem unreal, or else a testy monarch of arbitrary and uncertain temper. We have to make a real effort to get ourselves out of this way of thinking. But Papa Charlie, that was her name for Charles Filmore, Papa Charlie talked to God and about God as though he was the oldest and dearest of friends. My grandfather practiced what he preached. He certainly was not formal with God. Whenever he had a problem to consult his friend about, whenever he was grateful or happy about something, in fact, whenever he had a spare moment, he would simply visit with God. Now, I make a point of that because, to me, this is the secret of living the really good life, of being prospered without trying, of being healthy so you don't have to take medications, of attracting happy experiences, happy, wonderful people into your life. I want you to know you can... No, I'll hold that for a minute. I want to ask another question first. How many of you know what a GPS is? I won't ask who doesn't know, because we'll know you're out of it. But the global positioning system, as we know, is one of the greatest inventions of our time. I use it all the time. Coming here today, I used it. I can't remember where this place was. I live in Reno. In any event, it is true. As I go around the city, I remember the names of all the streets, but I've forgotten how they come together. But I never have to worry about it. I just plug in the address, and it takes me where I want to go. And the little voice says, in 600 feet, you're going to turn right. Oh, yeah. So simple. But you know what? If I turn left, what's it going to do? Oh, how does it work that way in your car? In my car, this voice comes out and says, "You stoop, you have taken the wrong turn. You are going straight to you know where." The truth is, as you all know and respond so beautifully too, it just recalculates to get you back on track. If you read the really deep thinkers of our time, they all agree that humans have never really discovered anything. No, I'll cross that out. Have not invented anything. They only discover the universal principles and put them together in what we call an invention. And so what I want to affirm for us today is that the GPS, the global positioning system, came from a principle that's natural to the universe called GPS. It's called the God positioning system. The God positioning system. It works exactly the same way. When you lock on, because when you use your GPS in the car and the phone, you're locking onto satellites up there. Back in, I think it was 1997, the first one was put up by our government. Now, I don't know, there's something like 27. It takes at least 9 of those satellites up in the sky for you to use your GPS anywhere in the world. But when we use the God positioning system, we have to lock on. And when we lock on, that position starts directing us in wonderful, invisible ways. And I loved your meditation along that line. That was wonderful. When you put yourself in touch with God, and really mean it, And how do you mean it? And I think I've talked with you about this before, and I said, you really got it? And I'm working at it all the time. Jesus told us how you do that, how you lock on the God positioning system. How many think you know it? Good boy. Go ahead, take a shot at it.
Be still, know that I'm God.
That's a nice one, but that's you flunked. Okay, I shared that, I don't know, months ago, so I can understand you've forgotten it already, but don't forget it next time, because I mean business this time. You lock on to the God positioning system, as Jesus told us, to love God with all your heart and soul and mind. It's exactly the way you lock onto any relationship in this world. It's what keeps husbands and wives together. Or friends. They love each other. But if they're not expressing it, which reminds me of my joke, I bet I've used it here 10 times or 20 times over years, but about the guy that was well, I can't remember it. Maybe I don't need to tell you.
That's a good joke.
Yeah, well, oh, I hate to forget that. But anyway, it's so easy to say, yeah, I'm locked on to God because I love God. But have you talked to God like Charles Filmore did? Have you talked to God on a regular basis? If you love God, you can't help but do that. And if you do that, you automatically release the power and the authority of God, just like we release our global positioning system to begin to feed back to us the information we need to get to the destination we desire. And the highest use of that is to realize something that I think is the essence of what I want you to take home with you today. And that is to realize what is God's purpose of having you? Why are we here? And I think right now, the world and America, we're living as if we're all just a bunch of unique souls that are here, thank God. We're here, we say, and we thank God. We're here to work out what we really want in life. We want more money, we want more friends, we want better jobs, we want all these things, and we are actively involved in that kind of meditation thought all the time. I don't mean to assume that, but the majority of people, I can guarantee you, they think about that the most time. That's why they walk around Walmart like this all the time. Because they're pondering, how can I pay the rent? How can this happen? What can that happen? When the truth is, if they had locked in to the GPS, the God positioning system, God will make those things open up for you. Life is meant to be easy. You do not have to sit in the lotus position all your life going, I am a child of God. I am prosperous. I'm healthy. We live in a world, thanks to Norman Vincent Peale and others who have expressed the power of positive thinking. So we think, well, I'm created to make my own way in this world, and to do that, I've got to make it happen by getting my thinking straight. And I'm trying to say, bottom line is, you don't have to do that. If you lock into the GPS, it's all worked out for you. Your uniqueness will be used. When the Filmores made this covenant, they gave over their lives to Spirit. And wonderfully, they affirmed the word, if we do this, we know everything will be taken care of. And it was. The unfoldment of the unity movement was a happy, easy, wondrous process. I shared this concept with somebody just the other day, and they looked at me and said, well, come on, you got to do something. You can't just sit back and God's going to do it all. Well, the same thing's true of the global positioning system. Once you get in the car and turn it on, how are you going to get to where it's telling you? You got to drive the car, right? But you drive the car in the confidence of knowing ultimately Spirit's doing all the work, or the system is doing all the work. My job is just to follow through and to keep locked into the Spirit, to God, in a perfect way. I do that by, basically, what's the basic thing? Love God with all your heart and soul and mind. Okay. When I talk next month, I want to talk about the answer to that question, well, you got to do something, because there are things that we do. Again, as you drive the car, you know, you brake and you accelerate and you turn when it says turn. So there are things for you to do, but they are not the kind of things that pressure you with the thought that I don't know how it's all going to work out. I don't know how I'm really going to get there. I got to close. But, you know, how many of you ever gone into New York City and not really know where you're going, but you have an idea? Before the GPS system, folks, that was a heavy-duty assignment. And I've done that. I mean, you know, you have to have the map in one hand or all the rest, or have it all written out, turn here, turn right, and hopefully that you do it right. And if you do it wrong, then you're really lost. But if you've got that GPS, you just sit in your car, go right into New York City, no problem, no pressure. That's the way I want us to live our lives, without pressure. You don't have to make it happen. You just have to agree with it. Know when to turn the wheel, know when to brake, know when to accelerate. We can do it. Let's close our eyes for a moment. Oh, blessed presence, we give thanks for the wonder of this truth that we share. We give thanks that we can live our lives without any sense of pressure. Thank you for your guidance. Thank you for your abundance. Thank you for your perfect life that moves through every cell of our bodies. Thank you for the loved ones you bring into our lives. Thank you for using us, that we might glorify the wonder of your love for us. We give thanks for this in the name of Jesus Christ, our way shower. Amen.